Hello everybody, and in this video I'm pretty much going to give you the gist in how I ended up getting through, graduating in the school system with not learning to pretty well read and write. I did a little bit later on, but I completely struggled all throughout elementary, junior high, and even high school. If you watched my other Dear Diary videos, you already have the gist of how and why this started to occur and happen. I'll leave a link down in the description below to that playlist if you do want to watch it, get caught up, because you might be a little bit lost and some areas might be a little bit vague if you haven't, and you still might have questions on how this ended up manifesting. Now, to just give a quick recap of it, my parents ended up getting divorced. I ended up moving and pretty much going in and out of the school system because we moved so much. I would live with grandparents, I'd live with my mother's boyfriends, I'd live in shelters, I'd live in just relatives' houses. I was just from house to house, place to place, a lot of different, living situations in a very short amount of time. And I was in and out of schools. There were periods of time I wasn't in school at all. It was just a hot mess and a complete disaster for my, growth and development when it came to education. Not only that, the teachers sadly did end up failing me. Not all of them, some of them did really try, and I do greatly appreciate it, but there were other teachers that just had no time for it, didn't want to put in the energy and the effort, and was just like, okay, you move on, go on type deal. Because some of them did have an idea, and I do recall that, had the slightest idea that I was really struggling, but they just didn't want to put that time and energy in. There was a teacher, I do remember, I even know her name still to this day, who put in so much work to try and get me there, but just sadly, it just wasn't enough. Once grade 1 occurred, I was in a townhouse, which is just a house that's joined to another house, and we were in a pretty okay neighborhood. I was in a school there from grade 1 to grade 3, and I also had to repeat grade 1 when we lived in this house because I moved so much. I was way behind. School year was half over, and I couldn't read, I couldn't write my name, alphabet, nothing. I completely struggled from start to finish. I was so frustrated. I felt really bad because my mother did remarry my stepdad. He was trying to help and coach, but it was falling flat to the point I had him pretty well believe that he was helping me, and to this day I feel really bad about it because he would, on special occasions, my mother would brag about it, and not so much now, but when I was younger she would, and just be like, oh, he taught her how to read and how to write and this, that, and the other thing. And I literally found a way of coping with struggling to pretty much have him think and believe that he was helping me, simply because I was getting so extremely overwhelmed and frustrated with trying to learn this stuff that I just wasn't grasping and getting. So, for example, we would have these books that we would read. They were different levels. He would read a bit of it, then I'd read what he just said, and then we'd do that same book the next night, to where I was like, aha, eureka moment. I'll just start memorizing what he's saying, and then that's how I will read the book, and he would think I was reading the book. And you're probably thinking to yourself, and I discussed this in one of my other videos, Dear Diary videos, oh, but that is reading, you're learning how to read. No, simply because if you gave me another book, I wouldn't know a single word in that book. I would struggle. I'd probably pick out a word here or there, but this was something that was going on for years, to the point that I got to grade 4 before I actually could start to kind of read books, and even then I was still struggling. All I was simply doing was, he would read it and we'd go through it the night before, over and over and over. I'd just try to remember here what he was saying, so then I just repeat it back. But if he grabbed another book randomly off the shelf, which he never did, which honestly he would have caught it there and then what I was doing if he'd done that, but he didn't. He would sit down with the same one that we had from the night before. I would just rehearse pretty well. Okay, here we go, this is the same book from the night before, and just read it off because we already did the night before. And that was just something I did. The other thing was, this wasn't something that he was sitting down with me years on end, months on end, trying to help me. I think it was just a few months. He was doing this for a few months to catch me up, thinking he was catching me up, because where I did have to repeat grade 1, but little did he know, I was just memorizing pretty well what he was saying, knowing that we were going to do the same book the next night, and just rehearsing it back just because of memorization of what was verbally said. This was a technique because I was getting so good at it, I even implemented and started to do in school. Anything visual I seen, and it's probably a huge reason why I started to really gravitate towards like movies and documentaries and things of that nature that would showcase on TV, simply because it was a technique I knew that I could actually learn and recognize and just be able to sink in and grasp a lot easier and quicker. But anything visual, if the teacher was up visually doing something, I could remember it a lot easier. But the moment you had me writing it down, like tests, I completely would always bomb. I'd try my hardest, but a lot of the times I would really struggle with tests and assignments. Oh, it was a complete nightmare. But the first time I did grade 1, I was already halfway through the school year. I didn't grasp anything. I didn't know anything. I went into it completely. This was before my stepdad even jumped in to try and help me. I was completely lost, not in my element, just, oh my goodness. I just went in there to color and draw and go home. That was pretty much it. And play with the toys there, because they'd have like Legos and stuff, and I was like, yeah, all about Legos, building things. Oh my goodness. If you gave me some Legos as a kid, I was like in my glee. And like I said earlier, the school and my mother and my stepfather discussed it with the school. They thought it was best that I repeat the school year again because I moved and because I was in and out of school so much. I was best off repeating the grade again. Now this go around, I had a different teacher who actually, this is the one I was saying earlier, she tried so hard to try it. Oh my goodness, I can't even begin to tell you how much she tried her hardest to get me to learn and get me to catch up. But it was just, sadly, it wasn't enough because the class was so far ahead and more advanced than I was, and I was so far back. It was really hard to give me that attention and time when she was trying to teach other stuff to other children. So that's when she tried to get my stepdad to teach me home, and that's where I said earlier how I started learning this technique of just, okay, just listen to what he's saying and just repeat it back. He could be there 1,000 times going over the same words over and over again, and I just wouldn't sink in. And then grade 2, grade 3 were the exact same thing. I was just really struggling, finding it really hard. I was starting to refuse to do take-home assignments and worksheets. If I really had to do it, it would take me forever. In grade 3, I ended up having a teacher that didn't really believe in taking home homework, and I was so happy about that. I completely, though, struggled. It was so difficult, so hard. And then we moved, and then I ended up in another school, and then grade 4 came, and this teacher didn't believe in take-home homework, and I was like, deadly, this is awesome, I'm so happy about this. But this teacher would hand out rewards to kids for spelling. And I know people say you shouldn't bribe children to do well in school, but this teacher, for a kid that was struggling so much to read and write, she was my go-to right now because of this little reward system she had for spelling. It was just something that encouraged me, made me excited, made me want to learn. It didn't feel like so much of a chore or so much pressure put on you. It was like, okay, if you do good, this is what you get. But she was the type of teacher, if you didn't do well, it's okay too. We just gotta work more on it next time. She was very encouraging. And I'd do a spelling test and I'd not do good on it, and I'd do another one not so well on it, and I was trying so hard. But then there was this one word, and I still remember to this day, that even though I didn't do well on the test, if you got it right, you ended up getting a bag of Skittles. I was up hours and hours just trying to learn this word and trying to study it. And it was echolocation, and it was ECHOLOCATION, and I just made up like a little rhyme so I was able to remember it. And I remember standing up in front of the class, and she'd ask everyone the word. No one else could get it, and then I got it, and I ended up getting a pack of Skittles, and I was like, yes. And that's when I knew. I was like, wait, I can do this. I can learn how to read and write. It's just taken me a lot more and a lot harder and just a lot more work, but I can do this. So I would start to try to practice learning words a lot more. And it was all just simply because this teacher's technique just clicked with me, and for some reason just made me have a eureka moment, like, wait a second, I can do this. And even the teacher was like surprised and really proud of me. She's like, good job, you did that. Now get like the simpler small words and you're good to go, because this is a big word that you probably will never use in your lifetime. And what's funny is I never use that word in anything, I don't recall. But I was just so proud of myself, And I just knew, okay, it's gonna take me a lot more, but I can do this. And that's when I started to really buckle down. Then grade 5 came. I was still kind of struggling, but I was getting basic words, and that started also in grade 4. Grade 4 is the foundation of when I really started getting basic words like is, and, you, he, she, those type of words. I was getting all the basic fundamental stuff, and I was so proud. Now, if you gave me a bunch of sentences and everything, it just started to become a blur again, and I had to literally break everything down into small sections to try and grasp it still. And because of this, I got a little frustrated because everyone was so far ahead of me when grade 5 occurred that I thought, okay, well, in grade 6, I'll switch to French. It was a new program being introduced at our school. They were implementing it, seeing how the kids took to it and seeing how the school could handle it and all of this jazz. So I signed up for it and switched over to French, and oh my goodness. First going through the gate, I did really, really well because it was easy stuff. It was like the alphabet and your numbers and just the weather and things like that. The first few months were a breeze. I loved it. I enjoyed it. I was getting it. I was grasping it. Everything seemed fine. Then Christmas hit. After Christmas, that's when you had to do more. The journal writing, more sentences. And I was like, oh no, here we go again. I couldn't do it. I so bombed that when grade 7 hit, I went back to English and I was like, yeah, I can't. This is like, I thought this was going to be easy and a breeze and I'd be fine. Thinking, hey, switching to another language, I should be better at it, but no, it was a complete flop. But all through junior high, 7, 8, and 9, I was still getting some sentences, but not really. I was still kind of struggling. And I started to use, as I said earlier, I was using the technique of visually, everything visual. As long as it was visual, I could kind of soak it in like a sponge. It was one of those things that came naturally, and even to this day, my husband even said, like, you're the type that when you see it, you know how to do it type deal. Which is also a really good thing because I like a lot of things that are hands-on, and when I visually see things, I soak it in so well, and probably why, one of the biggest reasons I love mechanics so much. Absolutely love anything mechanical. It's just, and just construction and all that stuff just really just, I don't know, it lights up a big spark. It just, I love it. But anyway, 7, 8, and 9, I start to learn another little technique. And this was because exams and tests, assignments were becoming a lot more intense at this time in my life. And for someone who was struggling to read and write, it was very overwhelming and a lot. So the next technique I ended up learning, not just visual, it was simply just taking questions that were already in an essay or test or assignment and putting it back into the answer, or flipping through the tests and looking for parts of questions and answers and all this stuff, or just looking for things to just place it elsewhere, somewhere in the test. It was a lot of like flipping back and forth. Multiple choice I would do, I'll write on depending if I was able to make out the words and words below. But it just sucked because I knew material and I knew material. Just getting it down on the paper, it was just, so frustrating because I couldn't do it. And then I'd get these low marks simply because I couldn't express it on the paper because I couldn't remember how to write it out. I didn't know how to spell certain words, and it was so embarrassing because I didn't want to be steady like going up to the teacher, so what is this word? Or having them call to my desk like, hey, how do you spell this? How do you spell this? Because then they'd be like, I don't know. It was really embarrassing for me, and I didn't want them to know that I was struggling so much. But I guess I scraped by. I just did what I had to do to get through. There was a lot of spelling mistakes on some of these tests and stuff. I still know that and recall that, but I did what I could with what I was given and had and the ability to do. Some of you are probably like, okay, but you had parents home. Didn't they help? My mother worked pretty much till 9, sometimes in the night. She wasn't really involved and didn't really want to seem involved when it came to doing homework. But even when my brothers were going through school, she wasn't the type to be like hands-on when it came to our education and stuff like that, and just sitting down and doing homework. And when I did learn basic stuff, I would try to help my brothers as best as I could because I didn't want them in the same situation that I was in. And I didn't want them to ever feel how I felt going through school. So whatever I did know, I tried to help them as best as I could with it. Then high school happened, and it was pretty much the same thing I was doing in junior high. I was doing in high school, just a lot of visual and a lot of just picking apart assignments and stuff like that to try and get through. Sorry, back again. I just had to go get a order that got dropped off at the door. All right, good. But as I was saying, sorry, before the door, through high school, I was pretty much using those same techniques. But the upside was in my English exams, I was able to take in dictionaries and thesauruses, which I totally took advantage of. Not that I took advantage of it, just it made it a bit easier for someone like me because I just flip through and get the words I needed. But it was still a struggle and it took forever. I'd never 101% complete an exam. There was always questions I'd have left out just because I never had the time. I was spending so much time on each question, just looking up the words, flipping through the tests and exams, trying to match words up that I could recognize and use. It was just, oh my goodness, it was a lot. But I ended up graduating, and I also graduated with most improved student. And I ended up getting like a little plaque that said most improved student and this, that, and the other thing. But even later, when I started to go to college, it was a complete struggle and embarrassment. It was so difficult. And even when I met my husband, who at the time was my boyfriend, we met in grade 12. Well, it was the summer of grade 11. But we started dating, and all through grade 12 we were dating. But he was like my high school sweetheart, but not really because we went to separate schools. But he had no idea that I was struggling this much. It wasn't until later, I think it was before our first Disney trip, that I finally opened up and talked to him. So it was like 2015, 2016, I actually expressed to him how I struggled. And it was getting frustrating and overwhelming for me, and just, I was in and out of different programs in school, which I'll go through in another video. But if you all knew how many different programs I went through, I could be, I was kind of nervous to tell him and kind of ashamed and embarrassed because I didn't want him to judge me simply because of it. But knowing him for as long as I did, I also knew that wouldn't be an issue. I just could trust him with this, and I knew that he would be warm and embracing. So it was kind of like I was nervous, but not at the same time nervous. I knew that he wouldn't really be that way, but I was still scared of it type deal. It was, one of those situations. But I confided in him, and I told him, and I said, like, I got to tell you something. Even when you're texting me and I'm talking to you through text, I'm using the Google help thing, like how on the bottom how you type it in and it pops up the words. I'd use that. Or anytime he'd send me something, I'd have to highlight it and use the audio thing to hear what he was saying to me and then text back. And it would take me forever to text him back because I was really reliant on the whole autocorrect word situation. But I just opened up and I expressed to him, this is my struggle, this is what's frustrating, this is what's holding me back from accomplishing and doing certain things, and it was affecting me in the workplace as well as the school. And not only that, my personal life, and I was over it. I needed somebody to help me and who knew about this and could actually take the time, and somebody I actually could trust and open up to about this, who would take that time to help me. And sure enough, he sat down with me, started downloading apps on our iPad for me, started helping me, sitting down, doing up little spelling tests and going over different words and teaching me them. And it was so nice. It was such a blessing. And then when we went down for our first Disney trip together, he ended up getting me this diary so I could actually write down my experiences and my day-to-day on our Disney trip. And honestly, out of all gifts I've ever gotten, or things that I've gotten personally, that was so meaningful and meant the most to me because it showed me that he listened and he cared and he knew that this was something I was struggling with, but how far I come to the point, here's a diary and you can write in this now. I don't know, I remember I got a bit teared up because it was just such a meaningful thing that he thought of and got me, and I was so happy and excited. And I was like, I can actually write in this. And even to this day, yes, I do struggle a little bit. There's certain words, or when someone's going on and it's a long paragraph, I'll still kind of struggle with it, but it's nowhere near, not even close. It's night and day from where I started to where I am now. And it's sad because I remember I told him this story that back in elementary school, we had to write a short story, and I I was so into this story I was writing, and oh my goodness, you couldn't pick out half the words because I couldn't spell them. But I was so into the story in my mind of what I wanted to say. I remember it was like pages and pages and pages. And looking back now, I feel so bad for that teacher that I had to sit down and try and like figure out what the heck I was talking about. But I felt so proud of myself and so accomplished because I was just rambling on, trying to make sense of what I was trying to think in here and put it on the paper. Yet half the words were misprinted and half, oh my goodness, it was a hot mess. But the first time I could sit down and really do something like that was with this diary, this Disney diary. Let me go get it. Let me show you it. Here is the diary / journal here. He actually got it for me in the gift shop at the Disney resort that we were staying in. And it just says on the front, most magical place on earth. And it has the Cinderella castle and gold. And I love this. I love it. But you just... look, it even has a little Disney emblem on the little laps here. Is that what these are called? But anyway, just open it up. And then you have the castle design on the inside again. And then it's just the pages in here. And then the front pages are my entries that I will do in another Dear Diary series. But this is pretty much the book he got me to write in for any time we go on a Disney trip. That could be Disney World, Disney California, wherever we tend to go, or if we go on Disney cruises or Disney adventures, anything. This is what he got me to write all that in. And it is a tradition that we started, and I did it on the first trip, and then our second trip down I did it again. And it's something I'd like to just continue to do and just fill this up and hopefully get another one. That if it's not the same one, a different one. But oh my goodness, this was absolutely beautiful, and I'm so grateful for it, so happy and so thankful. I just, oh my goodness. And I got Walt Disney World on the side here. I don't know if you guys can see it. There we go. Walt Disney World. But no, every time we'd go back to the resort at the end of the day, or when we were on the plane on our final day, this is what I was writing in, was this right here. And I was so proud of myself. I was so proud of my husband for taking the time and the energy to invest into trying to teach me. And it just, I don't know. But this here meant so much to me because, like I said, it just showed me that he was paying, hi Kenai, that he was paying attention and that he's seen how hard I was working and how well I was doing with it to say, okay, you know what, here you go. We're down here now in Florida. Write your adventures in here, write your journeys in here, because he knows I'm all about like the arts type stuff, photography, filming, writing. So it was so heartfelt and just made my heart melt. I don't know, I have the best man ever. I really do. But that is it for this video. Thank you so much for watching. Like I said, how I got through, I don't know. How the teachers didn't catch on, I don't know. I struggled. I should have opened up at some point, and this is something I guess I want anyone who's watching to take from this. Don't wait like I did and literally struggle and suffer. If at home, there's no one at home, a support system there to help you, then definitely at school, find a teacher that you trust or a friend you trust to just confide in and open up and say, like, listen, I need help. I'm struggling. But my fear and the reason I didn't open up, and I know they actually took this out now, you actually can't, where we live, you can't hold kids back anymore. Like, if they are struggling, they go ahead regardless. I think the majority of why I was so terrified to open up to somebody at school about my struggles was because I was afraid I was going to get held back yet again, and they were going to keep me back, and I didn't want that. It was a fear of mine, I guess, I started to get because of it, and I just did what I had to do to get by. So sadly, it came at the cost of a few other things because I struggled so much. Like, there were times I'd completely avoid school because I knew we were doing a lot of writing that day or something. I'd fake sick just so I could stay home, and then I'd just like play with my Barbies or Dinkies or whatever. I also loved playing with Dinkies. Like, we had a field trip that we were going on, and a lot of times I wouldn't go simply to field trips because I knew there was writing going to be involved in the field trip, that we'd have to write stuff, and I was like, no. My mother wasn't very much like, okay, it's a field trip, you gotta go, or oh, it's school, you gotta go. Like, if I said I wasn't feeling good and I didn't want to go, that was it. That was the end of the discussion. I didn't have to go. It wasn't like, I don't know. Definitely, like I said, if there's somebody you can confide in or someone you can talk to and open up to help you, please do so. Don't do what I did and wait till you're like mid-20s before you actually tell somebody and let somebody help you with it, because you're going to miss out on so much. Writing and reading, it opens so many doors for you that you don't even realize. And I never realized it when I was younger. It wasn't until I got, like I said, junior high-ish, high school, that's when I really started to kick in. And especially when I got to college, I was like, oh my goodness, what am I doing with my life? I cannot do this. I'm struggling way too much. I can't read and I can't write. But if I had my time back, I probably would have opened up to a teacher, I think, because there were a few teachers that did really try to help me along the way. But I was just so scared, so terrified that, okay, if I open up and I tell them I'm struggling this much and they sit down and they realize, oh my goodness, like she is really struggling here, I was terrified I'd get held back. It's another reason why I started to learn that technique with memorizing what my stepdad was saying when reading books and just repeating it back to him, because I was so terrified that they were going to keep me back. And I didn't want that. I couldn't have that happen again. To me, it was so embarrassing. It was so frustrating and upsetting. And I just felt like a lot of it, I remember just saying to myself, this isn't my fault, so why am I paying for something that's not my fault? All these people are going ahead and I'm stuck back with people that are younger. It was so many emotions during that time. It was unreal, especially for such a small kid. But no, I'm happy now because I can do that. Like I said, it's not like at no expert level. There's still words and sentences that I still kind of struggle with, but it's more so words now, not as much sentences. Like I still can't spell certain words, and there's ones I really, really struggle with. But I just like to say to my husband, hey, can you help me this word? I'm like, I don't know. And he would gladly help me. But again, it's nowhere near how bad it used to be. It was brutal. But thank you so much for watching. I'll see you guys hopefully real soon for another video. Bye now.